we're in the Testament of Dan, chapter number 2. And this book is going to give us a warning concerning the spirit of anger. So let's start off in the book of Dan, or the Testament of Dan, chapter 2, verse number 1, where it says, "And now, my children, behold," and let me put the marker up there so you can follow along. "And now, my children, behold, I am dying. And I tell you of a truth, that unless ye keep yourselves from the spirit of lying and of anger, and love truth and long suffering, ye shall perish." So the first thing we notice is the fact that the patriarch Dan, or at least the former patriarch Dan, we understand that Dan is no longer listed amongst the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel. But nonetheless, when he was counted as one of the patriarchs, he left a record to his children. Very similar to how Jacob left a record to his 12 sons, or left a blessing to each of his 12 sons before he passed. So now we're reading a similar testament, only this time it's by the patriarch or former patriarch Dan. And he's warning his children specifically about the spirit of lying and anger. And the first thing he tells his sons is that they must keep themselves, meaning they must protect themselves or guard themselves from the spirit of lying and anger. And we're going to see why he ties these two spirits together in a few moments, but keep in mind, first and foremost, he states that his sons must protect themselves from lying as well as anger. Now, some of you may be asking how. We hear these concepts, or we hear these statements being made concerning protecting ourselves from this spirit, protecting ourselves from that vice, right? So now the question is, how do you protect yourself from the spirit of lying and anger? And when I say protect yourself, not just when it's happening externally, because usually when we think of, or when we go into these topics, it's very easy to look externally and to see who around you or who it is you interact with that is engulfed and overtaken with the spirit of either fornication, adultery, lying, anger, addiction. It's very easy to take on the viewpoint of someone externally dealing with these spirits and being able to identify and examine when these spirits are operating externally. But today's topic is more so going to be focused on internally. Meaning, when we say to guard or protect yourself from the spirit of lying and anger, protecting ourselves from the spirit of hatred and jealousy, we mean specifically protecting ourselves from being overtaken by the spirit of hatred, by the spirit of jealousy, by the spirit of envy, by the spirit of lying, falsehood. Right? So this is going to be an internal reflection lesson, right? So again, the patriarch, the former patriarch Dan, states that his children must keep, meaning they must guard, meaning they must protect themselves from being overtaken by the spirits of lying and anger. So now, again, the question is how? Well, we're going to discuss that in detail before the lesson is done. You'll know how, but Dan gives us a clue. Check this out. He says that unless you keep yourselves from the spirit of lying and of anger, and love truth and long suffering. Let me highlight that. And love truth and long suffering. Meaning what? That the counterbalance to lying and anger, lying and hatred is what? Love and long suffering. It's by those two spirits that you are able to prevail against the spirits of lying and anger. What are those two spirits again? The spirits of love and long suffering. They are hatred and lying's counterbalance. Right? So it says, unless you do so, ye shall perish. It will consume you to the point of death. It will consume you to the point of destruction. It will consume you to the point of eternal damnation. Right? So now let's move on. The next thing that Dan highlights is the fact that anger, the spirit of anger, causes blindness. We're not talking about someone possessing the handicap which does not allow them to see physically. We're talking about spiritual blindness. And again, we're going to explain these things in detail a bit later by providing biblical scriptural examples. But again, take heed, take note of what Dan is saying about this spirit. It says that anger is a blindness, or that anger is blindness. This is verse number 2. For anger is blindness and does not suffer one to see the face of any man with truth. Meaning what? The spirit of anger blinds you to the point where you cannot correctly perceive the person with whom you are angry. You can't see the person that you hate in the proper light. Why? Because you're blinded with hatred. Why? Because you're blinded with hate, anger, jealousy. So he says, for anger is blindness and does not suffer, meaning it does not allow one to see the face of any man. Anyone with whom you're angry, or anyone with whom you are jealous of, for whatever reason, you cannot see that person in the proper light. Why? Because your vain opinion of them that is affected by your hatred, your anger, and your jealousy causes you, or causes your judgment to be overthrown. So he goes on to say, we're going to read this down. Picking up in verse number 3, it says, for though it be a father or a mother, he behaveth towards them as enemies. Meaning what? Once you are overtaken by the blindness of anger, the spirit no longer discriminates. Now you hate anything. Now you hate everyone indiscriminately. Right? Even your mother and your father that brought you into the earth is not safe from the spirit of hatred that has consumed you. So he says, though it be father or mother, he behaveth towards them as enemies. Though it be a brother, he knoweth him not. Though it be a prophet of the Lord, and I'm going to highlight this because, again, the topic of discussion is the spirit of anger and jealousy makes us enemies of Christ. So we're going to highlight this, and we're going to come back to this when we start to dive in, when we start to expose what it is about this spirit that causes us to oppose Christ himself. But staying on track, it says here, he disobeyeth him, though he be a righteous man. So even the righteous is not exempt from being a target of a hater. A prophet sent by the Most High God himself is not exempt from being the target of a hater.
The Bible. Is it hard to understand?
When it comes to reading the Bible, the first thing that comes to mind is the fact that this is the Word of God.
The seals have been broken, and the truth is here.
And when we go throughout the scriptures, when we go throughout extra biblical records, we find that the language that God employed, that he used to create the heavens and the earth, was the Hebrew language.
Christ said, I came for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. But yet no one, no religious leader, no religious church out there anywhere can now identify the 12 tribes of Israel. Can we? God is quite simple, but it seems as if man makes understanding him hard.
What are those mysteries?
The truth of your book and the truth will make you free. The Hebrew and Bible Academy, you're invited.